the final part in this series, I'm going to be looking through the post-Heisei era and the Millennium era, as well as finally the MonsterVerse, basically covering from 1996 all the way to 2014. Now, I'm pretty sure a few diehards were wondering why I left the original version of Godzilla 1998 out of the last video, and it's literally just because the last video got very cluttered, and since this film was originally meant to come out in 1996, I thought it'd be quite logical to start this video with that one. Now, when I originally begun this series, I said I'd be doing 5 parts in total, but due to the length of the 5th video that I'm currently editing at the moment, I decided to knock both episodes 4 and 5 together into just a much longer episode. It won't be as long as episode 4, probably not even as long as episode 1, but even so, that's why there's now just 4 videos instead of 5, just a quick explanation. So, with all that out of the way, let's begin. The original idea for what became Godzilla 1998 began in 1992, when Sony bought the rights for an American adaptation from Toho. Terry Russo and Ted Elliott ended up writing the script, with the two later on going to create both the original Shrek film, as well as write most of the Pirates of the Caribbean films. Russo is also currently in charge of the writer's room for Godzilla vs. Kong, so hey, at least he ended up with a Godzilla movie at some point. Now, the film follows a brand new creature called Godzilla, who would be tasked with defending the Earth against a monster known as a Griffin. Godzilla would have been much more of a saviour character, similar to the version in Godzilla vs. Hedorah and Godzilla 2014, but it would have been artificially created, which is really fucking weird. Yeah, I'm not joking there. I know a lot of people praise this version compared to 1998, and I'm 100% with them, but having Godzilla be, created by man is a very odd concept for me. Now, originally the film was meant to come out in 1998, which is why it has the 1998 slot, but ends up being completely cancelled due to one very famous point. Sony did not want to spend $100 million on a Godzilla film. Tell me lies, tell me sweet little lies. But anyway, I'm not here to discuss the failure, the huge failure of Godzilla 1998, but I will state that the franchise may have been very different if we got this movie instead of the one we ended up getting. Speaking of which, now, Godzilla II was a planned sequel to Godzilla 1998. The film would have followed the characters from the previous film, saving the baby Godzilla seen at the end of that film. A lot of the plot details were later reused with Godzilla the series, so there's not much point going on about it, but it was also meant to get a third film as well. Basically, Sony saw the box office for Godzilla 1998 and it wasn't even close to the heights that they wanted it to be, around about $500 million. They wanted to make a sequel with a much lower budget, something that Roland Emmerich and Dean Devlin dropped out of because essentially Sony won't give them another $130 million to throw directly in the toilet and then shit all over, so they left, essentially proving the very strong fan theory at the time that they didn't give a shit about Godzilla, they just wanted a quick cash grab in order to get as much money as possible, and Godzilla would do that for them. Now, another film concept at the time was just a Japanese King Ghidorah movie. Obviously, they couldn't do a Godzilla film at the time, with Sony's movie out, but not much else is known about the project. The only thing that is known is that it was going to be the first solo movie for King Ghidorah, but the film never ended up being made, and it was most likely fused with Rebirth and Mothra 3, although some rumours do state that the thing that he'd be fighting is Godzilla Jr. from the Heisei era, which would have essentially made this the 8th Godzilla movie in that timeline, which sucks beyond so much belief because we never got that 8th Godzilla film focused on Godzilla's son, and it's a massive shame. I know there's a fan theory about Godzilla 2000, which is fan theory I personally really like, but it's never been confirmed by Toho. In fact, it's been denied by Toho, so it's not very helpful. When it comes to Godzilla reboots, Toho actually had many ideas to reboot Godzilla before Godzilla 2000, such as Godzilla battling Anguirus, King Caesar, Mechagodzilla, and even Kumonga, but Sony also planned their own reboot, starting from scratch and ignoring Godzilla 1998. Obviously, none of this happened, with the franchise continuing with the American version through Godzilla the TV series, and with Toho's Godzilla 2000. There's a lot of interesting opportunities here. Godzilla vs. Kumonga would have been awesome if they updated Kumonga the same way they did for Godzilla Final Wars. I love that character, I think they're really underrated, and as just a spider on its own, it's inherently creepy to a lot of people, so bringing them back would have been really good in my opinion. Now, even though it didn't exactly break the box office, Godzilla 2000 did do rather well. So a writer of the American version of the film came up with a direct sequel titled Godzilla Reborn. The film focused on Godzilla attacking Hawaii and being killed partway through the film by the military, only for him to realise Godzilla was there to stop a new monster, leading to them bringing him back to life. Now, Toho did actually approve this project and were fully on board, but did ask that Godzilla was knocked out, not killed. Sony also seemed interested, realising that they still had 2 more movies under their distribution deal, but upon finding out that it'd be a man in a suit, not CGI, they declined, leading to the project being cancelled. Now, in my opinion, that's really dumb of Sony, because they had 2 more movies to bring out. They could have easily made about 100 mil on this project, easy, if it was a man in a suit, and they wanted to slash the budget anyway, so I don't see the issue. I have a lot of problems with Sony personally, so I won't get into that, but parts of this film did end up influencing a lot of aspects of Godzilla 2014. The new monster in the film, Miba, was a massive inspiration of the Mutos according to the creature's creator, with the Hawaii scene in the 2014 film also possibly being influenced by this film. Not 100% confirmed, because obviously when it comes to America, Hawaii is a very important location for the country itself and for all the country's states, but it's still interesting to look at it as very similar to what Godzilla Reborn was going to do, and Godzilla 2014 did it so damn well. In 2001, Toho attempted the third reboot of the Millennium era after Godzilla vs. Anguirus failed to make much money. Now, originally a film titled Godzilla vs. Kamacuras was planned, but dropped due to Toho's worry of having Godzilla go up against another insect-like creature, which had previously appeared in a prior movie. Not much else is known about the project, except that it was stylistically very similar to the previous film, as well as being written by Shinichi Kaneko, who previously rebooted the Gamera series to massive critical acclaim for Dai and a huge box office success. Godzilla vs. M was another concept created by Kaneko, which focused around an astronaut who gets mutated into a kaiju. The film was apparently going to be very similar in style to Frankenstein vs. Baragon, focusing heavily on the emotional damage occurring to the humanoid character. The film was scrapped though very early in development, so much it didn't even get a real title, leading to Kaneko to create our next concept, which is by far the most famous one. Godzilla x Varan, Baragon and Anguirus, Giant Monsters All-Out Attack, is essentially the original version of GMK. The film followed the same basic plot as the finished film, with some huge differences. Number 1, Baragon was brought back to life for the final fight. The Gitenga from Atragon would have made an appearance, which was swapped out for the Satsuma in the final film, with a lot of it staying quite similar, with Godzilla being resurrected by the souls who killed by Japan's war atrocities, something I'm surprised stayed in from this concept all the way to the final film. Now, personally, the thing I think is most interesting about this is that this would have been Varan's first appearance in film for 33 years. With Godzilla vs. Giant Monster Varan being scrapped for Godzilla vs. Destroyer, the character hasn't appeared in any movies to date since 1968. Not one. The only stuff he's appeared in is through stock footage, like in Godzilla Final Wars, but nothing since then, and it's really surprising since the character is well-liked, just the films he's appeared in aren't. This would also be Baragon's last film appearance today, and it being another 3 years until Anguirus' next appearance, who also had not appeared in movies for a very long time, all the way since 1974's Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla. The film has also been referenced a massive number of times, with a lot of fans of the series being very upset with what happened. The modeller for the suits even loved Varan that much. When he designed King Ghidorah's heads, he used a very basic Varan design for them in order to keep Varan in the film in some way. A lot of the comics, such as Godzilla Rulers of Earth, as well as the Godzilla novel Monster Apocalypse, all reference this fight, with Varan, Baragon and Anguirus all teaming up together to try and battle Godzilla. They lose in both occasions, but also in both occasions Godzilla is wounded in some way. Honestly, there is so much about this film online. I just tell you to check out some of the stuff yourself. It was such a massive wasted opportunity from Toho. I will state that GMK worked out pretty good in the end, but this kind of concept of having lesser known monsters come together could have really helped the saturation of both King Ghidorah and Mothra. This movie would have been so good. I'm just very glad that it's not been forgotten, and stuff like Rulers of Earth keeps it in the public consciousness. Up next, I have to mention another huge lost treasure, Godzilla vs. Gamera. Essentially, the studio who owned Gamera approached Toho with the idea, but they declined it. Apparently this is due to having to split the box office of the other studio, and the original version of the film having Gamera win over Godzilla. Now, this is definitely the saddest What If Godzilla movie, as it would have been one of the greatest kaiju showdowns of all time, but sadly it's most likely never going to be made, because Toho themselves have got a very negative track record when it comes to owning properties. Now I know the title may be confusing, but oh my god, Toho does not like Anguirus at times, and I don't get why. They cancelled his 2001 film, replacing him with other characters. He was then apparently meant to be in Godzilla x Mechagodzilla, or Godzilla against Mechagodzilla, but was cut out last minute, and then his death cameo in Godzilla Tokyo SOS was swapped out for a monster which only appeared in Space Amoeba. As a fan of Anguirus, why did they keep fucking over Anguirus? I know he ended up appearing in Final Wars, but that wasn't really much of a role either. I want more Anguirus. So, you know, thank you Godzilla King of the Monsters 2019 for trying to include him, even if it's for 3 frames and he's a dead skeleton, but hey, at least he appeared. Godzilla vs. Deathla was planned as a direct sequel to Godzilla vs. Hedorah, with original creator of that film Yotsumi Shibano creating this one as well. The film itself was going to be an IMAX short film around about 36 minutes long, with Toho agreeing to a contract as long as they did not have to finance the project, as well as having final say on Godzilla's design. The film originally featured Godzilla flying, similar to how he did in Hedorah, battling across the United States, eventually ending up in New York, where Godzilla defends the 9/11 monument. He defeats Deathla by blinding the creature, and Deathla itself can also change into locust-like creatures quite similar to the stuff that we saw in Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, with the film ending up not being made. Instead, Banner decided to revise the script and change quite a few elements, which is our next entry. Now, Godzilla 3D to the Max follows a very similar plot but runs a few minutes longer at around about 42 minutes. It adds some more human characters, including an older cop lady and a young child. The backstory ties into 9/11 because, you know, that's a good idea when you're in New York, with the rest of the plot staying essentially the same. Bano didn't like a lot of the references, so he removed all the stuff to do with 9/11 and ended up changing the final fight from New York to Las Vegas. Now, the film ended up not being made after Legendary wanted to get involved in the project. They intended to make the film's feature length instead of a short film. Due to the contract with Toho, Bano had to let the license expire, and then a new contract with Toho was renewed, this time with Legendary Pictures instead. It kind of sealed the fate of Godzilla 3D to the Max / Godzilla vs. Deathla, but because of the film's cancellation, they began work on what ended up being Godzilla 2014, with Bano working as an executive producer. Let's talk about the original version of Godzilla 2014. It had some very notable changes compared to the final version. First off, I'm going to mention just some quickfire stuff. The Mutos had different names. The married couple in the film are originally siblings, meaning that their son does not exist because we're not in Alabama throughout this film. Akira Takarada has a cameo, and the scene was filmed and can be found in some places online, but was cut mostly due to time restraints, which Warner Bros. Forced Legendary to do. In the original concept, Godzilla was a lot taller at 182 meters tall. This was cut to get it more in line with San Francisco's skyline. The film's tone overall is noticeably darker, much more in line with horror movies, such as when Ford sees a dead child's toy, and Joe Brody, called Nathan Brody in the script, doesn't say goodbye to his wife, instead it gets there too late to see her go. Burning Godzilla is also hinted at in this version, with Hiroshima playing a much bigger role as a historical event in the film compared to the Castle Bravo nuclear detonations, which is what the final version ended up being. In this version, Godzilla was also found in a block of ice, which is an idea which was later reused for King Ghidorah in Godzilla King of the Monsters. Arguably though, the biggest change itself is Joe Brody. Now if you've seen Godzilla 2014, he's played by Bryan Cranston, and one of the biggest controversies with the film, apart from Godzilla's lack of screen time, is how they kill off Bryan Cranston's character about an hour into 2.5 hour long movie. And what's interesting is in the original version, Joe Brody didn't die. Honestly, this is a massive shock because they have such a big character arc in the original version of the script. It is online if you do wish to read it, and the changes are huge. He's all the way in the movie. It does switch protagonists still from Joe Brody to his son Ford, but with Joe just being there in the background, it feels much more organic, like it's carrying on, whilst in the final film it seems to be after Joe Brody dies, Ford's like, oh no, my dad's dead. Well, better make sure that doesn't happen to my wife. It's a very bad move in my opinion, and it's one of the biggest controversies in the film for very good reason, with another huge change being the Mutos themselves. In the final film, it's hinted that their EMPs can stop Godzilla's atomic breath, or at least delay it. But in this version of the film, it's confirmed, with the male Muto also being able to use Rodan's shockwave ability, as well as both Mutos being killed in completely different ways. Now, for the EMPs, this was used for the novelisation version of the film, and it is done rather well in the film, with it being hinted at a lot of the time, but just a little bit of confirmation would have been nice. Even so, I do have to say, I really did enjoy Godzilla 2014. I thought it was a really amazing way to bring back the character, to bring back the universe, and to establish a brand new one, with Godzilla King of Monsters being an amazing follow-up, Kong Skull Island being a great prequel, and I'm very excited for Godzilla vs. Kong coming out November next year. I think another important part to mention though about Godzilla 2012 before we move on to the final film in this series is that it was at this stage in production when Gareth Edwards decided to use the camera techniques used by Banner in Godzilla vs. Hedorah, basically focusing on a human perspective instead of an anything goes style. So I think it should become a very key element for the MonsterVerse going forward, with both Kong Skull Island and Godzilla King of the Monsters focusing a lot on the human aspects, looking at the monsters from those kind of angles, instead of the over-the-top, top-down shots like what we're seeing a lot in the Showa and Heisei eras. Now, to end this, I decided to mention Hedorah vs. Medora, which is essentially the film that Banner was still working on when Godzilla 2014 was in development. It was a direct sequel to Godzilla vs. Hedorah, with Godzilla apparently appearing in much more of a supportive role, focusing much more on Hedorah, and a brand new villain called Medora, which was apparently a good version of Hedorah, and Hedorah did not like that. Not much else is known about the films except the titles, and it is a huge shame that Banner was never able to make this film, this sequel he'd spent all his life since the original one came out trying to make, before his very, very sad death in 2017. But I think we also need to focus on the positives of what he was able to do. He brought a character who'd been dead for years back to life with the MonsterVerse, so his legacy still lives on, and I really, really do hope one day that either in Toho's new Godzilla universe or in the MonsterVerse, we see a new version of Hedorah to represent the work that Banner tried to do for 40 years. Thank you so much for watching. Honestly, this series has been so fun to do. I've really enjoyed covering it, and it does help that all 3 videos are my top 3 viewed videos since I rebooted the channel. So next week I'm going to be releasing a supercut styled thing of all 4 episodes together, with a brand new intro, brand new outro, a couple of little bits sprinkled in there, but essentially that's it for me for 2019. And seriously, thank you all very much for watching. The support I've been getting recently is really awesome. Actually getting comments in videos is really cool. So hey, if you have an idea for what series I should cover next for Unmade stuff, comment down below. I am currently working on a Unmade Friday the 13th video, but I don't intend to release that until the next Friday the 13th, just because, you know, it works quite well. Thank you all, seriously, this has been so awesome. If you do enjoy this kind of content, please be sure to like the video and subscribe down below. So, with that gone, have an amazing New Year's everyone, and I'll see you all in 2020. Goodbye!